Mary Kay, the Jim Schwartz situation feels clunky to me. If you're telling candidates that you'd really like to keep Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator, why don't you just hire Jim Schwartz as your head coach?
Well, it depends on what you want. Once again, I think you have to go through the process. I think you have to talk to all these people and see how you feel about the direction and the vision for your football team. If you want to keep your head coach around for the next 10, 12, how many ever years,
Eagles ownership is watching in absolute disbelief as their former Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz is about to make a move that could change the entire NFL landscape. While 9 teams are fighting over head coaching jobs, Schwartz has positioned himself as the kingmaker for Shedeur Sanders' future, and the Browns are literally telling other coaching candidates they need to keep Schwartz if they want the job. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The way Schwartz is maneuvering right now, he's not just choosing his next job, he's choosing Shedeur's next team, his next system, his entire NFL destiny. And the power play he's running has former employers like the Eagles wondering how they ever let someone this valuable slip through their fingers.
It is interesting. I think I've gone from I feel like Jim Schwartz is a failsafe to I don't think Jim Schwartz should factor in on this other than whoever's your head coach better damn well keep Jim Schwartz as your DC.
I mean, it just seems obvious if you're, I don't know, 90% of the people we're talking about that you want Jim Schwartz on your staff in some capacity.
Yeah. But like,
why would you make that change?
But as a head coach, like I don't know, like has Jim earned another head coaching job? Well, he's been an elite level defensive coordinator, right?
So let me break down what's happening in Cleveland right now, because this is one of the wildest coaching situations I've ever seen in my life. The Browns are one of 9 teams looking for a head coach. 9. The entire NFL is in complete chaos. Mike Tomlin just stepped down from the Steelers. John Harbaugh got fired by the Ravens. Kevin Stefanski is gone from Cleveland. The only coach left standing in the entire AFC North is Zach Taylor. And that's absolutely mind-blowing when you think about it. But here's where it gets interesting. While all these teams are scrambling, fighting, competing for the same pool of candidates, the Cleveland Browns have one secret weapon that nobody else has. His name is Jim Schwartz, and the way they're using him, or more accurately, the way he's using them, is about to determine the entire future of Shedeur Sanders' NFL career. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns for Cleveland.com, just dropped some bombshell information that should have every NFL executive paying attention. She revealed that the Browns are actively telling head coaching candidates, guys like Jesse Minter, Nate Scheelhaas, Grant Udinski, all these young coordinators, that in a perfect world, they'd love for them to keep Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. Let me say that again. The Browns are interviewing people for the head coaching job, and they're saying, hey, we'd really like you to keep our current defensive coordinator. That's wild. That's unprecedented. That shows you the kind of leverage and power Jim Schwartz has right now. And you know what the craziest part is? One of the hosts straight up asked Mary Kay, if you're telling candidates you want to keep Jim Schwartz, why don't you just hire Jim Schwartz as your head coach? And she couldn't give a straight answer, because the real answer is complicated. The real answer is about Shedeur Sanders.
Search. Obviously, I don't think they can be in a spot where maybe, Tennessee is or the Giants are with Jackson Dart and Cam Ward respectively. They say, hey, this is our young kid. We're going with him. We're going to build around him. But where do you think the Shedeur Sanders, and to be fair, let's throw Dillon Gabriel in there because he did start this season as well. So these 2 young rookies, how do you think they factor in to this coaching search as far as their importance?
See, here's what's really going on behind the scenes. The Browns have a massive decision to make at quarterback. They've got Deshaun Watson, who's been a complete disaster. They've got Dillon Gabriel, who barely played. And they've got Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round pick who everyone in the building knows should have been a first-rounder. And according to Mary Kay Cabot, the Browns are asking every single coaching candidate the same question. What do you think about Shedeur Sanders? Can you work with him? Do you see him as the quarterback of the future? But here's the twist. They're not just asking about Shedeur, they're also asking these candidates if they'd be willing to work with Jim Schwartz, because Schwartz isn't just any defensive coordinator. He's the guy who built the 4th-ranked defense in the league. He's the guy who kept the Browns competitive when the offense was putting up 3 wins. He's the guy other AFC North coaches have raved about all season. And most importantly, he's a former Eagles defensive coordinator who won a Super Bowl in 2018. The Eagles know what they lost when Schwartz left Philadelphia. They've seen what he's built in Cleveland, and now they're watching him potentially become the most important decision maker in Shedeur Sanders' entire career. Because here's what nobody's talking about. Whoever the Browns hire as head coach has to be someone Jim Schwartz is willing to work with. And if Schwartz says, "I'm not working under this guy," then that candidate is out. The Browns can't afford to lose Schwartz. He's under contract, which means other teams can't poach him for a coordinator job. But if he gets a head coaching offer, he's gone, and the Browns lose the only thing keeping their defense elite. So they're in this impossible situation where they need to find a head coach who can develop Shedeur Sanders into a franchise quarterback, is willing to keep Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator, is someone Schwartz actually wants to work with. That's a really small pool of candidates, and it gets even smaller when you realize what Mary Kay Cabot revealed about the Browns' strategy. She said, and this is huge, the Browns are hoping that some of these coaching candidates get excited about Shedeur. They want someone to walk into that interview room, look at Shedeur's tape, and say, "You've got something special here. I can build around this kid."
I think I have noticed an uptick since Schwartz got the request to interview in Baltimore, and certainly today with him actually interviewing in Baltimore, and my initial read on it remains the same. I think they interviewed him in case they hire Kevin Stefanski as their head coach because he's going to be their DC.
I think that's the right read,
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I saw a lot of people get anxious about you can't let him go to the Ravens, and I agree as a defensive coordinator. You can't let him go to the Ravens. If they want to hire him as head coach, then go with God. I'm not letting that.
Because if they can find that coach, and if that coach is willing to work with Schwartz, then Cleveland doesn't have to waste a draft pick on a quarterback. They don't have to trade for a veteran. They don't have to keep dealing with the Deshaun Watson disaster. They can just build around Shedeur and move forward. But here's where Jim Schwartz's leverage becomes insane. Schwartz has already interviewed with the Ravens. Baltimore wants him. They know what he can do because he's from Baltimore. He's coached there before. They've watched him dominate the AFC North from Cleveland. They're interested. So now Schwartz is sitting in this position where he can essentially pick his next situation. Does he stay in Cleveland as a defensive coordinator under a new head coach? Does he take a head coaching job somewhere else? Does he go to Baltimore and reunite with his hometown team? And whichever decision he makes determines what happens to Shedeur Sanders. Think about it. If Schwartz stays in Cleveland and the Browns hire an offensive-minded head coach who believes in Shedeur, then Shedeur gets to develop behind an elite defense. He gets time to grow. He doesn't have to carry the team immediately. That's the perfect situation for a young quarterback. But if Schwartz leaves, the Browns lose their defensive identity. They lose the one thing that was keeping them competitive. And suddenly, whoever's playing quarterback, whether it's Shedeur or someone else, has way more pressure because the defense isn't good enough to carry them anymore. Mary Kay Cabot laid it all out beautifully when she was asked about what makes the Browns' job attractive. She said they've got a dominant defense, the best defense in the AFC North with the best talent in the division. And then she got to the quarterback situation and said, right now they don't know who their starting quarterback is, but they've got Shedeur and Deshaun and the number 6 overall pick.
Well, I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think there are many things about this Cleveland Browns job that are attractive. And I think that one of them, obviously, is the fact that they have a very dominant defense. So I think that, that is something that, especially if you are a defensive-minded head coach, you're going to look at this job and say, yes, they do have the best defense in the AFC North and the best talent in the AFC North. So I do believe that from that standpoint, you can look at it and say it's number one in that category.
Did you catch that? She mentioned Shedeur first, before Deshaun Watson, before the draft pick. Shedeur Sanders is the first name that comes up when talking about Cleveland's quarterback future. That's not an accident. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's the organization leaking through the media that Shedeur is their guy. And the way she described the coaching search makes it crystal clear. The Browns are picking the brains of every candidate about Shedeur. They're asking, what do you see in him? Can you work with him? Do you think we have something here? She even said, and this is the most important part, in a perfect world, they would like some of these candidates to get excited about Shedeur and tell the Browns, hey, we think you have something here. Because if they could do that, they would save themselves a whole lot of trouble, time, money, and everything else to know that they could build around him. Translation, the Browns want to build around Shedeur. They're just waiting for the right coach to validate that decision. And whoever that coach is needs to be someone Jim Schwartz approves of. Because if Schwartz doesn't approve, if Schwartz decides to take a head coaching job elsewhere or go to Baltimore, then the entire plan falls apart. That's the leverage Schwartz has. That's the power play he's running. And that's why the Eagles, who let him walk away after winning them a Super Bowl, are probably kicking themselves right now watching this unfold. Because think about what Schwartz accomplished in Philadelphia. He came in, built an elite defense, won a Super Bowl in 2018, and then left. And what happened to the Eagles' defense after he left? It got worse. Not immediately, but over time, they lost that edge. They lost that consistency. They lost that ability to dominate games when the offense struggled. Now, Schwartz is doing the exact same thing in Cleveland. He took over a Browns defense that had talent but was underperforming, turned them into a top 5 unit, and made them the only reason Cleveland was competitive this year. And now he's in position to either stay and help develop Shedeur Sanders into a star, or leave and watch the whole thing crumble.
I can't do that with Jim.
Yeah, I mean, the thing...
And I can't give up a great defensive coordinator for what I think is a slightly below average head coach.
I'm just not interested, if we're being honest. Is it fine to say? I'm not. I want him here as the DC. I think that'd be great. I love that. I'm just not interested in him as a head coach. And that's fine. I get it. A lot of people made relationships with Jim Schwartz. They like Jim Schwartz. I understand it. If you're going to go something that isn't McDaniel, I want you to take one of these young offensive-minded coaches and take your big swing. Take your big chance.
And here's the thing about Schwartz that makes this situation so fascinating. He's not just a great defensive coordinator. He's a leader. He's someone who commands respect. He's someone players want to play for. Mary Kay Cabot said that other AFC North coaches have raved about the Browns' defense this year. That's not just about scheme. That's about culture. That's about Schwartz's ability to get the most out of his players. So when the Browns are telling head coaching candidates, we'd really like you to keep Jim Schwartz, what they're really saying is, we need you to keep Jim Schwartz because he's the foundation of everything we're building. And if you're a coaching candidate hearing that, you have to wonder, am I really the head coach here, or is Jim Schwartz? That's the clunky situation Mary Kay was talking about. Because if you're telling candidates to keep your current defensive coordinator, why not just make him the head coach? Unless there's a reason you can't. Unless you need an offensive-minded coach, specifically because you're trying to develop Shedeur Sanders. And that's the real story here. The Browns aren't just looking for any head coach. They're looking for someone who can develop Shedeur while working alongside Jim Schwartz. That's the only scenario where this all makes sense. That's the only way they keep their elite defense and develop their quarterback of the future. But finding that person in a market where 9 teams are competing for the same candidates, where John Harbaugh is talking to the Giants, Titans, and Falcons, where Kevin Stefanski is about to get snatched up by someone else, that's nearly impossible. So the Browns are stuck, and Schwartz knows it, and Shedeur Sanders' entire future hangs in the balance of whatever decision Schwartz makes next. Think about the scenarios. Scenario 1, Schwartz stays in Cleveland. The Browns hire an offensive-minded head coach who believes in Shedeur. They build the perfect situation. Elite defense, young quarterback, clear direction. Shedeur develops into a star. The Browns dominate the AFC North for the next decade, and everyone looks smart. Scenario 2, Schwartz leaves for a head coaching job. The Browns panic, hire someone who doesn't believe in Shedeur, draft another quarterback with the 6th pick, and waste another 5 years trying to figure out the position, while their defense falls apart without Schwartz leading it. Scenario 3, Schwartz goes to Baltimore. The Ravens become the best team in the AFC with an elite defense and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Meanwhile, Cleveland falls apart, Shedeur gets buried on the depth chart, and we never get to see what he could have become with the right situation around him.
The Jim Schwartz situation feels clunky to me. If you're telling candidates that you'd really like to keep Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator, why don't you just hire Jim Schwartz as your head coach?
Well, it depends on what you want. Once again, I think you have to go through the process. I think you have to talk to all these people and see how you feel about the direction and the vision for your football team. If you want to keep your head coach around for the next 10, 12, how many ever years,
That's why this is so big. That's why the Eagles are probably watching this with regret. That's why Jim Schwartz has more power right now than any defensive coordinator in football. Because he's not just deciding his own future. He's deciding Shedeur Sanders' future. He's deciding whether Cleveland becomes a contender or stays in mediocrity. He's deciding whether the AFC North stays chaotic or if one team rises above the rest. And the wildest part? Schwartz doesn't even have to do anything. He can just sit back, let the offers come in, evaluate his options, and make the decision that's best for him. He doesn't owe the Browns anything. He doesn't owe Shedeur anything. He can go wherever he wants, whenever he wants, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop him. But if he does stay in Cleveland, if he does decide to be part of building around Shedeur Sanders, then we might be witnessing the beginning of something special. Because you put Jim Schwartz's defense together with Shedeur's arm talent, processing speed, and football IQ, that's a championship formula. That's a dynasty waiting to happen. The Browns just have to find a head coach who can make it all work. And based on what Mary Kay Cabot is reporting, they're struggling to find that person. They've interviewed 6 candidates so far. They want to talk to at least 3 more. They haven't even scheduled an interview with John Harbaugh yet, even though they've talked to him. So they're running out of time. The dominoes are starting to fall. Harbaugh will get hired soon. He's talking to the Giants today. Kevin Stefanski will get snatched up. The best candidates will be gone, and the Browns will be left choosing from whoever's left, hoping that person can work with Jim Schwartz and develop Shedeur Sanders. That's not a great position to be in. That's desperation, and desperation leads to bad decisions. We've seen it before in Cleveland. We'll probably see it again. Unless Jim Schwartz decides to save them. Unless he decides that staying in Cleveland, building around Shedeur, and creating something special is worth more than taking a head coaching job somewhere else. That's the only scenario where this works out for everyone involved. But will he do it? Will Jim Schwartz sacrifice his own head coaching ambitions to help develop Shedeur Sanders into a franchise quarterback? Or will he take the money, take the power, and leave Cleveland to figure it out on their own? We're about to find out, and whatever happens next will determine not just Schwartz's legacy, not just Shedeur's future, but the entire direction of the Cleveland Browns franchise for the next decade. So here's my question for you. Do you think Jim Schwartz should stay in Cleveland to help develop Shedeur, or should he take a head coaching job and secure his own legacy? And if you were Shedeur, would you want Schwartz to stay, or would you rather have a new defensive coordinator who doesn't have that much power? Drop your honest take in the comments right now. If you think Jim Schwartz is making the smartest power move we've seen in years, smash that like button. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this crazy coaching carousel. Turn on notifications because this story is changing by the hour, and you're not going to want to miss how it all plays out.